very welcome to the second edition of Ireland from the Beginning. Last week we covered fairly comprehensively, in fact a bit too comprehensively. I'd hoped to keep it to at least 5 or 6 minutes, but it ran on to over 14 minutes. But we'll be more brief, hopefully we'll be more brief on this occasion. What I want to do is to concentrate on the ages after the Ice Age, but before the turn of the millennium. So let's kick off with the Mesolithic age. Meso, the middle between the two stone ages. And it's at that period, which is probably about 8,000 years before Christ, 8,000 years BC, that the first real inhabitants or immigrants arrived on the Irish shores. Ireland at this stage was well crystallised, was well formed. As I said last week, we're talking about a context of 1/50,000th of the existence is what we cover from antiquity. So, for example, if this podcast ran on for 6 minutes, we're talking about 3 or 4 milliseconds in the context of this podcast. So it would give you an idea on a micro scale rather than the macro scale last week as to the tininess of our existence as an island and as a people much later on. So the Irish people, not the Celts, because that was much later on, started to arrive as the Ice Age started to deplete, as we had global warming. And it is thought that the original settlers came from the Isle of Man. That's the Isle of Man that's really in the centre of the Irish Sea. So it looks out onto the mountains of Mourne to the west. It looks out onto Cumbria, the mountains of Cumbria and England to the east, and it looks north, straight north to the Scottish Isles, Kintyre, all the way up that way, up the rim, towards the Northern Channel, where the Atlantic, as I said, funnels in and causes huge tides. So perhaps using those tides, or perhaps there was a causeway there as the ice melted, they arrived and they were still hunter-gatherers. It was not until 3 or 4 millennia later that the Irish people started to farm the land. These were hunter-gatherers, and there's a lot of evidence, maybe for example at Mount Sandal, where they left behind them middens, that is an area where things would have been burnt, so a lot of bones, of human bones, animal bones, would have been found in these middens. And also what would have been found as well would be very primitive tools and weapons, and indeed flints, because in those days, just after the Ice Age, it would have still been fairly cold, and even in today's in today's climatic context, even last week, those of us who were living in Ireland know that it got down to -7 or -8. So we had hunter-gatherers, we had the tools to excavate, we had the tools to hunt, and the tools to kill. To kill the initial fauna which would have followed them, and they would have been elk, wild boar, big type animals that we don't have anymore. We have smaller native animals now, like the badger being one of the biggest, but before that we had the great Irish elk, we had wild boar, very large animals that could feed an amount of people, that could feed a family, or that could feed a tribe. A tribe in that, a gathering of people, not a definitive tribe that we'll talk about later on. It is well to know as well that around that time the population of Ireland would have been about 3,000 people. So they would have been scattered all along that eastern rim from, say, Torhead down as far as Carnsore Point, which is the area that faces onto the Irish Sea from where the original immigrants would have come from. So that would be, as I said, the Isle of Man, but also from Scotland, from that ancient area that didn't exist then but existed later on and still to an extent exists, called Dalriada. It's that area between Mid-Ulster across the Northern Channel and into the Isles of Scotland. So it's from there that the original people would have come from and settled in an Ireland that would have been desolate at the time, very boggy from the influence of the Ice Age, and as it dissipated, it would have dried out and became a settled home for those at last, those first Irish people who came to hunt and gather and live along the coast, to live in the caves. And later on then, before even the Neolithic Age, we had these more primitive settlements. And then as the Neolithic Age came in about 4,000 years BC, we would have seen more sophisticated settlements that we see today, say in Fornox Neolithic Tomb, or Newgrange, which is more famous, but less fascinating than Fornox. But more about those later. Next week we'll migrate onto the Neolithic Age, and I will try and talk a little bit more, because there's more stuff to see in Ireland in relation to the Neolithic Age. So, Idir an Dáil, good day, Shiv Slán. Thank you.